how does that translate to where we are now? Where does the analogy come into the American?
Well, we do not have a Caesar. Yes, we do not. I know.
It was unprecedented.
Well, it was unprecedented.
We don't want to give up our voting rights.
Yes, and I'm not saying that we are at the stage. First of all, we don't have a Caesar. We don't have anybody that great possible for us. We don't have that. Two, there were various steps along the way, including 63 BC, when the Romans could have said, wait a minute, we're going to take back our responsibility. We're going to, again, ensure that we have campaign reform, I mean real campaign reform. We're going to hold the Senate to doing its job. And we're going to participate actively in shaping our policy. There were roads, there were stops all along the way, and I think this election was one of those stopping points where we can say, yes, we're going to take back our ability to decide for ourselves. We're not going to blame the politicians in Washington. We're going to use the best kind of term limits that exist. You just vote them out. That's why they didn't put term limits into the Constitution. You're the term limit. You vote them out. But you must remember, the President of the United States can do almost nothing. It is Congress. So the stopping point here will be if we hold Congress accountable. So I do not see us having a Caesar any time in the short term. What I do worry is that we will continue to drift from crisis to crisis.
What wise advice would you give our incoming president?
I would, well, you see, those who can, do. Those who can't, teach. And those who can do neither become journalists. So, I do not have that awesome responsibility. But I would say, one, go to the American people in that inaugural address the way that Franklin Roosevelt did, and call upon all of their best qualities. That is what I would start with, that inaugural speech, in which he says that our economy is frozen, our credit markets are frozen. This is not the result of a natural catastrophe. It is a result of the failure of business and finance. They are the money changers who have speculated with other people's money, he says. They have only the values of a generation of self-seekers. They have no vision, and when there is no vision, the people perish. But this is not a matter of words, Roosevelt said, it is of action. And then he laid out the plan that gave Americans hope. You can disagree with those policies, but he laid them out. He said, our first priority is to put Americans to work. The Dow Jones had fallen from 381 to 41. There were millions of Americans without jobs, millions of others who were working for almost nothing. We're going to put Americans to work. And then he invoked the idea of the World War. He said, in the World War, we enlisted men into the Army, and we're going to enlist them into a working corps. And still in Michigan, you can see things built by the WPA that last. Then he goes on and says, we're going to re-examine the way we produce. And what Obama would say is, we're going to go back to the idea that maybe America should produce something and not just be a service economy. And then he said, we are going to regulate the banks. And then he carried through. And the first job was to get the credit unfrozen. So within 12 days, he could go to the American people in a fireside chat and say, the banks are open again, and your money, I assure you, is safer in your bank than under your mattress. And they believed him. So lay out a clear plan and follow it. And then most interesting, though Roosevelt was not a religious man, he spoke about our returning to old and precious values, marching forward in the courage of national unity. He called it a national day of consecration. And on this national day of consecration, we invoke the blessing of God. May he protect each and every one of you. May he guide me in the days to come. That inaugural address must speak to the best in the American people. It must be followed. And Roosevelt also said to Congress, This can be solved under our Constitution. It's handed down to us by our founders. It is a remarkably flexible Constitution that has fought a world war, that has settled a continent. I will expect from you right away clear plans. You will get from me right away, and they did, my proposals. But if you do not act on my proposals, and if you do not send me adequate proposals, I will ask for a grant of executive power as broad and sweeping as if we were invaded by a foreign foe. Now, one of the things you asked me about President Bush, one of the gravest mistakes is to think you could fight a war in Iraq and let everything go on as usual. Roosevelt set the priority that it was the economy. In fact, he tells the world, look, you take care of your own business. Our business is America. And he set his priority and he mobilized the American people. So President Obama must mobilize the American people with these stirring words. He must follow through. He must hold Congress accountable. And he must do things in 100 days. Don't let the newspapers and media tell you, well, you know, gotta. Roosevelt got it done in 100 days. And that's what's got to be done. And then I think he will put us on the right track. I think many of his ideas for negotiating are excellent. We are now in a position where we cannot tell the world what to do. We could 4 years ago, we cannot now. And I think he has also brought to the American people, you pointed this out, getting them out to vote, but also to the world as well, a sense that change is here. And it'll be a good change if he acts upon it. So, you know, part of President Bush's legacy, and it was it was September the 11th, was a terrible thing. And for a moment, he had us ready. But it just filtered away. That's a wonderful question. Thank you.
Question over here.
Yes.
I was going to ask you about some of your points about freedom. As you spoke about one of President Bush's strengths being his commitment to freedom, and that also being part of the legacy of the United States. But you also spoke about freedom not being a universal value, and trying to reconcile those.